Welcome to the Workshop Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew, and joining me today is Building Jesse. I keep thinking in my head it's Building with Jesse, but it's Building Jesse, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So we were gossiping in the pre-show a little bit about your ducks.
Mm-hmm.
And you confided in me your disdain for ducks, but big ducks, not little ducks.
I mean, little ducks, baby animals are always cute, but I'm at a point in my life where I know that all of these animals grow up and you have to continue to care for them. And ducks are just one that I found. I don't, eat their eggs every day, so I can put up with the chicken mess, but ducks are just nasty. They're just gross.
Fair enough. Have you ever raised pigs?
I have 2 pigs.
Do you? How big are they?
Well, they're quote unquote mini pigs. My ex-husband and we got 2 meat pigs, and I kind of fell in love with them and learned that they're actually pretty smart. And so I wanted to keep them and was deterred from that because we didn't need to have like 2 500-pound hogs, running around and have to feed them. So I got my first mini pig, and I always put air quotes around that because it was kind of a fad for a while, the micro pig, mini pig kind of situation. And so he is a Juliana. So he's probably about 100 pounds.
He's not exactly mini.
It's not mini, but that's what people don't understand is that pigs grow for 4 years. So you get this teeny tiny little thing and they grow super fast, but then they continue to grow for 4 years. So, but his name's Phil, and he's my baby, and he's super smart and super clean, and he does tricks. So
you should feature him more on your social media. I think maybe you have shown him, and maybe I do recall you having shown him, but
I do show him sometimes. I could definitely show him more though.
You could be one of those. Sorry to anybody who's listening and is offended by this, but you could be one of those weirdos that has one of their pet pages.
Oh my goodness. He could be on his own page. I feel like that's a lot of commitment though.
Yeah. That's actually, with all due apologies to Keith from Blackthorn Concepts, he has his dog on there, Dr. Watson, or the story of Dr. Watson, I think is his Instagram page. And I actually appreciate his pet page feed because he's not one of those like, look at my dog with this funny hat type of people, right?
Yeah.
But I can't. I rescued a cat a couple of years ago. Yeah, two years ago. I was driving along in a blizzard, and I see something moving on the road. And so I slowed down, and as I go by, it's just this little kitten. And so I was just going to keep driving because I'm a heartless jerk, and then I couldn't. So I stopped and I backed up. And if it had run into the ditch or something like that, I would have just said, "Fine, you're on your own."
Yeah.
But as soon as I stopped, it came running up to my truck.
Oh.
And so then I picked it up and I brought it to my office. And anyway, couldn't find its owner. And it was borderline too small to be away from its mom. But anyway, so we ended up bringing it home, and so I put up a little poll on social media. I'm like, should I make an Instagram page of the story of Roadkill? And
you named it Roadkill?
Yeah, yeah, and everybody who answered the poll is like, oh yes, and so then I tried for a couple days, and I'm like, I can't do this. This is just no. All due respect to people who can, and especially the people who make money at it. But I don't have the patience or the time.
I know. I definitely follow plenty of people over on the TikTok who have like donkeys and farms and stuff. So I mean, I think a donkey is probably going to be my next animal. You heard it here first.
You're going to have to get a bigger property. You realize that eventually.
I, I would love to have a bigger property, you know. I feel like my ideal would be property on the river. We're kind of in the valley here, so having like a hillside where I can send my kids out to play in the woods and not have to worry about them. But there's got to be at least a creek or a stream or something, and enough room for lots of animals, and I'd be super happy.
Well, there's a creek right beside where we're building our house, and actually, where we're building our house, there's an intersection of a creek that runs past my parents' house, and then one that comes from the neighboring property, and then it goes north into another creek on the north end of our farm. So we actually have three creeks.
See, you need to share more about this stuff.
I should do it. I probably should do like a YouTube video tour of the farm or something like that at some point.
But, I think it'd be awesome.
Yeah. And then our actually, we just finished, should be today the construction guy is coming for running our water lines into our dugout, because we were looking at drilling a well for our house, and it was going to cost us $50,000 for a well at cheapest, with no guarantee of water. And so then, looking at other options, we decided to build a big farm pond, and then just do a water treatment system, and that was like a quarter of the price.
There you go.
With the added benefit of now we're going to have this big, huge pond that we can grow fish in, so that'll be fun.
There you go. I like it.
Yeah.
I think
so you're gonna end up like the like, I'm assuming you probably follow Anne of all trades.
Oh, of course I do.
So you're gonna sell your property and move to Tennessee or wherever next. Is that the plan?
I mean, I can't. I've thought about moving, but I mean, at this point right now, we have like my family's property, which we call the compound. It was my grandma and grandpa's house, which they're both gone now. But my grandma and grandpa gave little pieces of land to their kids. So my aunt and uncle built a house. My other aunt and uncle built a house. There's a big family pond in the back. My cousin has an accessory dwelling for her family there. And my dad retired, moved into a fifth wheel on the property, and has since built a house there. So, and my little brother now lives in my grandma's house. So that whole property is 5 minutes from me. My kids' dad is 8 minutes from me. So everything all the people are just so close. It would be really hard to move away.
That is important. And that is actually one of the reasons why we chose to move here too, is because, like I said, we're right across the road from my parents, and then my brother lives up the road. And he's, so I'm the youngest in my family by a lot. So my brother up the road, he's the only sibling that I have that has kids that's the same age as my kid. And so he has his youngest is the same age as my oldest.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have nieces and nephews that live 15, 20 minutes in the other direction that have kids that are kind of similar age to my kids and stuff. So
I just think it's important to be close to family like that. Some people don't care and they are fine moving to Tennessee, but I mean, I have too much here that I wouldn't be okay without my people. So
that's always a good support to have family around, especially when you have kids, is because
mm-hmm.
you have there's always those emergencies that crop up, and you're like, what next? And when you have somebody who's, you may be, and that's the thing about family is, for the most part, even if you're not talking to them and there's a fight going on, if there's an emergency, they're there to help you.
Oh, for sure.
Uh, and I say that with all due respect to the people who don't have that, because as much as I have a lot of family who is like that, I also do have some family that doesn't talk to me, and I don't know why, but is what it is. But anyway, so one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on the podcast, though, is you. Obviously, this is the workshop therapy podcast. Obviously, I'm doing my master's in clinical psychology, so that's where my interest lies as a career wise, and the kind of the purpose of this podcast is to for creative maker types, but with the bent on the mental health side of it, because I don't think we talk about it enough, especially in social media, because you have these people who, like, oh, look at Jessie, she's got everything going on. She's got her significant other's got an impressive beard, and she's got the beautiful acreage, and she's renovating her house. Everything's going great for her. But you made a post of a couple weeks ago now on your, I think it was on your stories, where you said something about dealing with depression and
Mhm.
stuff, and so I invited you on to talk about that. What's it like? What prompted that?
I think I really, I mean, I have struggled, over the years. I think a lot of people do struggle with anxiety, depression. I try to keep my page as transparent as possible. Like I was talking about my grandparents' property and how grandma and grandpa are gone now. The last couple years has been significantly harder for me, dealing with loss and grieving or not grieving until it all like kind of festers and explodes. So I hate coming onto an app that shows only perfection, and that has been really important to me. I think from the beginning was to be transparent and not show all the pretty stuff. And sometimes I think it's to my detriment, because as a content creator, I want to work with brands to, get stuff that's pretty. And then I'm showing my kitchen torn apart and all the rot in the walls, and, but that's the reality. Like, this is where I'm starting from. And maybe someday my posts are going to look a whole lot prettier. I mean, my kitchen does look nice. I just haven't really done a full reveal yet, uh, but it's a process. And within the process of renovating my house, posting my content, I have dealt with some really heavy stuff in my life, and I don't want to appear like you're saying, like, oh, Jesse's got it all going on, everything's so great, it's all so pretty. I want to show people that you can not be okay, and you can lean on your people, because at the end of the day, I have some really great, strong friendships that I've formed, even on Instagram, and people that I talk to quite frequently if something's not okay. So
Are you back?
I think you're frozen. Was I frozen?
I don't know who was. Yeah, sorry. Internet. So I'm on satellite internet.
Oh, that's
99% of the time, it's really good, but every once in a while it glitches. So it was probably me.
well. I was
But
talking, so hopefully, hopefully you got all that.
yeah, well, this does record in the background, so whatever you said will be on there, and I will just, at this point, I'll cut it again. And actually, I'm not going to lie, I'm not going to edit this. I'm just going to clean it up. So yes, that was very interesting, and so if you could recap slightly for people who may not have been paying attention, I would appreciate it.
I think the recap, my main point is that I don't want to be somebody that shows up and tries to just show perfection. Like, I want to show the process. I want to show also that, mental health is a thing, and we're not always okay. And if you see somebody showing up on social media and they seem like their life is perfect, I can almost guarantee you it's not. And they have struggles too. They just don't show them.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Um, I mean, to your point of showing the bad with the good earlier, uh, the times that I've had things that like videos that'll blow up and get millions of views or something like that, and you get a bump in your followers. They're kind of meaningless follows. It
Mm-hmm.
seems like the people that you were engaging with prior to that didn't change after that. Maybe one or two people do, but not really. And in your case, and there's lots of people out there who are showing the perfect pictures, and if that's all you want to see is perfection, then there's lots of it out there. But if you want to actually engage with people, I think the way you're doing it is much better. And because people, I was talking a few episodes ago. I had Bob at I Like to Make Stuff on, and he was talking about when he changed his business last year. About he spent a whole year, everything is just going downhill, and he was getting really stressed about it, and because he'd made this commitment to keep these people employed, and it was really weighing on him really badly. And sometimes, like he's one of the all-time people that everybody in this community looks up to, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think when we show our vulnerability or whatever, and we talk about that, then it makes it okay for other people to go like, you know what, yeah, life sucks right now, but and everybody is experiencing that same life sucks right now in different aspects, and it helps everybody understand that we're all in this together instead of competing with each other.
Yeah, community over competition. It's been really when I started on social media, I didn't realize the connections with people that I would make that were so genuine. Um, like I was saying, like I have friends on Instagram that I talk to about my personal life stuff. And if I have an issue, I can reach out to them and get support. Um, whether I accept support at the moment during depression is another story. But yeah, I mean, I think opening yourself up and sharing a little bit more deeply, and I'm not saying like you need to share your children if you don't feel comfortable with that. Like, I have one
Here's my
child.
social security number and my
Exactly.
here's
I
my
know.
personal phone number.
Yeah. I mean, I always appreciate seeing people that are more storytellers and share a little bit more about their life, not just, here's how I cut this piece of wood. Um, I want to see your personality. I want to get to know you a little bit. And that's how you gain that connection. But
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. That's to your point of storytelling. That's what engages people, though, right? Like, who watches? I'm going to say this somewhat tongue in cheek. Who watches Hallmark Hall of Fame videos? Like they're very predictable, and everything is gonna work out fine. And my wife loves them because she likes predictability, so that's what she chooses to watch. But the fact is,
we're frozen
Hallmark is
again.
never going to be
But I
a
think what
blockbuster
he's trying to
video.
say is that
And yeah, mine just said it dropped out again. Did you catch everything I said, or did I freeze?
you froze. I was trying to pick up the slack and be like, I think what he's saying is Hallmark videos are, something that are somebody's guilty pleasure, but they're very predictable.
Yeah, well, my wife loves them, but they're never going to be a blockbuster,
Right.
right? It's never going to be the Marvel franchise because there isn't like the gripping, oh, what's going to happen next drama, because you know what's going to happen next, and it's all going to work out fine. Steve and Bethany are going to get married, and they're going to run their Christmas tree farm happily ever after.
Right.
But yeah, but that's where, going back to depression again, so many people, and I think Now this isn't a professional. Maybe this is a professional opinion, but it's not a research-backed opinion. I think things like depression and anxiety are probably higher in the maker community than some other communities or creative communities in general. Actually, no, I'm going to take back the this isn't research backed, because creativity is associated with higher depression and anxiety. So in the maker community, it would make sense that that is there. And I think lots of us, myself included, probably escape to social media to get that dopamine hit
Mm-hmm.
that helps you feel better. But it's kind of a double-edged sword, because if you dwell on it, you end up ruminating and going, well, I'm not as good as that person, or I have these failures. But when people are genuine and they say things like, hey, I'm struggling with some depression right now, I'm struggling with some anxiety, then it kind of resets that and goes, oh yeah, I guess it's okay for me to be that way as well.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think that a lot of people find making as their therapy. And for me, that was, finding something that I enjoyed doing and working with my hands was my way of finding my own identity after becoming a mother. So, I've always worked. I went to school, I worked, I got married, I did all of those things. And then I became a stay at home mom. And I did that for 5 years, which I would never take a moment of that back. I so appreciate, my ex-husband for allowing me and, working with me to make that happen so that I could be with my kids. But in that time, I didn't realize how much anxiety I had and how much depression that I had. There's, a very long portion of time that I didn't leave my kids at all, ever. I didn't drop them off with somebody. I didn't go out and do anything on my own. And it wasn't until after I had my son and I had the postpartum depression hit, and that was pretty intense. And that was the first time I ever talked to my doctor about SSRIs and antidepressants. So yeah, at that point, and now my son is 8, so it's been 8 years of being on an SSRI. And she told me at that appointment, she said, I'm going to have you try this. I want you to come back in 6 weeks, and you're either going to say, I hate this, or you're going to say, why wasn't I on this a long time ago? And I went back to her 6 weeks later and I said, why wasn't I on this a long time ago? So, finding, my creativity and working with my hands was definitely helpful. But with that, I think that some people are scared to, talk with their doctor or to seek therapy and say, I'm not okay. Like, our brains get really loud sometimes. But I don't think anybody should have to endure that alone. There's lots of different ways to, get help for those things. And I know some people don't like medication, but there's talk therapy, there's medication therapy, there's lots of ways.
Well, this is the perfect opportunity for me to plug the affiliate link in the description for BetterHelp. BetterHelp.com.
Yes.
But no, like, not even that. But that's honestly one of the reasons why I'm doing this degree is because people need options, and there are many options. And if you're in a situation where you're uncomfortable, or you're depressed, or you're anxious, or whatever, you don't even necessarily have to go to your family doctor anymore.
Mm-mm.
And that's one of the biggest benefits of, in my opinion, of the whole COVID thing, is that it has opened the floodgates to the ability to say, I don't have to go sit on Sigmund Freud's couch. I can just pick up my phone and I can call the therapist, or the therapist and I, like I don't know how old you are. You look like you're younger than me. But when I was a kid, what we're doing right now was freaking science fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Video conferencing, it was like, that was the video conferencing was the domain of the extremely rich. And for the most part, it was science fiction.
Mm-hmm.
And now, you know, I'm literally I'm literally a mile and a half from my closest neighbor, who's my brother, and he's there's like another 5 miles to the next neighbor, and here we are talking via the internet, via space, and and the options for seeking help now are just so much more accessible.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And yeah, so with your, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I actually just turned 36 yesterday. My birthday was yesterday. Remember, that was
Oh,
why
well,
I was like, we got to do it on Tuesday. I'm not doing it on my birthday.
then you're not that much younger than me. You are younger than me, but not that much.
A little bit.
This is where I should be a gentleman and say, you look phenomenally young for your age.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Yeah. On a complete side tangent, because I have ADHD or something, I was watching Stephen Colbert,
Yeah.
and I forget who he was interviewing now, but he was interviewing some actress, and they were talking about sharing their age, right? And this woman, she said women always lie about their age in the wrong way. And he said, well, what do you mean? Well, women always say that they're younger than they are. And so, for example, ask me how old I am, and he says, well, you look like you're 50. And she says, well, actually, I'm 65. And Stephen Colbert's response was, oh wow, you look really incredible for being 65. And then she says, well, actually, I'm 50. But you see, if I said that I was 35, you would have in your head said, wow, you look pretty old for. So it's like, whenever you tell somebody your age, always tell them that you're older than you actually are, because then everybody thinks you look young and youthful.
I think that's great advice.
Yeah. So next time, say you're 50 and everybody be impressed.
Everybody be like, what?
Holy cow, what's your skin regime, girl?
I did have one more thought about the social media aspect of mental health. And I think this is an interesting conversation to have, but the irony of the fact that makers so prevalently have, anxiety, depression, or other mental health disorders, find something like building with their hands, and then they take that to social media where they're made to feel like crap about themselves on almost a daily basis. Yes, we get a dopamine rush when we get those likes and those comments and stuff, but it's so ironic to me that we have this, group of makers, and we do support each other. Makers supporting makers. I love it. But you have this group of people that is struggling. A lot of them are struggling, and they go to a platform that is just not helping. So,
yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's, I was going to say, I think that's one of the reasons why there are things that I don't share that are probably interesting to people. Like last night, I was out and I had my laser set up and I was grading my house site, so getting it ready for the water drillers, or the directional drillers, to run my water lines over to my farm pond.
Yes.
And anyway, it might have made an interesting video, but then afterwards, my son and we walked down to the creek and went looking for beavers and ducks and stuff. And so there's the creek that's, I don't know, 100 yards from our house. And that's one of those, I'll put my heartwarming music to the background while we walk hand in hand through the trees and the beautiful sunset. Like it was one of those picture perfect type of situations, right?
Yeah.
But then but then at the same time, I'm like, if I take the time to set up a camera and I whip out my phone, I'm disconnecting from that moment, and
Yes.
I'm making it less valuable in a way. Like there's value in it from a social media perspective, but there's also value in it from a I'm just connecting with my son and I'm not pulling up my phone, so my son knows that I am focused on time with him,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's where we as makers in general need to. You hear the phrase everything is content, but
Everything is content.
that's
Everything is content.
true, but also if you got into this for the mental health therapy aspect of it, then maybe sometimes you should just build the project, take the picture, and post the picture. You don't have to make 100 reels out of it either, you know?
Very true. Very true. I think that was one piece of advice I got a couple weeks ago when I posted that. I think it's my friend Hugh, who's in Canada as well. Do you know Hugh? Human Made?
No, I don't.
Oh,
What's his?
Human Made.
Oh, yes, I know.
Yeah.
I do follow him. Yeah.
I think he was the one that said, he's like, you need to go out in the shop and you need to just make something for yourself. He's like, don't set up the camera, don't do anything. And I think that's really, really fantastic advice. I I really do try to do things that are just for me. Ironically, one of my things is mowing my grass. Like, I love mowing my grass. I put my headphones on, nobody bothers me. It's a good, hour and a half of just mowing and listening to music, and I love it. The other thing I love is making sourdough. I have a sourdough starter, and I make bread all the time. I think I shared something about sourdough in one of my reels, um, you know, but people don't really know that I make sourdough because I don't share it. And I actually tried to film the process one day, and I was like, I don't enjoy that. I don't want to.
Yeah. This is me. This is my thing. I'm just going to leave it, and that's totally okay. And I
Yeah,
think a lot of people need to. I'm curious to maybe maybe this is one of those engagement polls I can put at the end. So if you're, I'm curious to how many people have those types of hobbies that they don't share for the mental health aspect of it. You know, like this is my thing, and I'm not going to share it because I want it to be my thing.
yeah.
Versus how many people feel compelled that, oh, I should do this.
I'm
But,
sure there's a lot because, like
yeah,
you're saying, everything's content. So if you're
yeah,
not filming it, did it really happen?
exactly. Yeah, and my wife also likes mowing the grass. It's like we got a new ride-on lawnmower a couple of years ago, and it was like 3 months before I even got to use it, just because she was be like Saturday morning, and she'd wake up early just to beat me to it. But
Yeah,
then
our lawnmower, we got a new Cub Cadet 3 summers ago, and I think it was no, I don't think I know it was the Beard Robert and I's first like big purchase together. And I think it was the same situation. I don't think I think he used it once that whole summer. So it's my thing.
that's
Sorry.
that's one of the things about growing up on a farm. There's a couple things that are completely mindless, but I enjoy doing, and one of them is mowing hay. It's basically mowing the lawn, except the OCD part of my brain with the disc spine behind it. All that grass just gets cut into a nice big pile and
Hmm.
long rows. That's super super satisfying. And then the other thing about uh, so maybe this is going to be a colloquial term that nobody will understand, but when you're cutting slough grass, uh, where it's kind of through a wetter area,
Hmm.
and there's wild mint growing in it, that is literally the best smell in the world. Like I can't imagine. And so those two things, like if you could live in those two Zen moments, life would probably be perfect. But,
I love it.
but anyway, yeah. So thanks for sharing about dealing with depression. I think it's like I said, it's important for people to talk about. And the last question I had for you about that is do uh, how do you find do you find like motivation when you're depressed in doing a project, or do you have to get past the depression to get the motivation?
I think for myself personally, when I go into a depression like I had a couple weeks ago, I shut down completely. But I think the reason that I shut down, I don't think, I know. Why am I saying that? I keep saying that. I know that it happens because there's something that I'm not dealing with. So I don't think it would be helpful for me to like force myself to get out in the shop and, you know, build something or make something cool. When I go into that space, I know for myself that I need to work through something. So a couple weeks ago, I had multiple phone calls with my brother of all people because he knows me better than anybody. But that's what I needed to do in that moment to kind of process and work through a couple things that were the reason for the depression. So if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I deal with the things and process a little bit more, I haven't been in therapy for at least 9 months now because I just wasn't super fan of my therapist. But if you don't have a therapist, everybody has that one person they can talk to or multiple people they can talk to. So for me, reaching out and saying, hey, this is where I'm at. These are the things I'm struggling with. Just doing that is hard for me, but it is the most helpful thing for me to process and get past the things that are causing the depression. And then I can get back to, it's almost like coming back to life after, you know, being in that state. So if any of that
Yeah,
made any sense.
it does. Yeah, I think that's so. So not to knock any therapists, but the research shows that like 70% of the therapeutic benefit of going to therapy is just having somebody to talk to. Like it's that and it's not just random stranger to talk to. Like therapists, a good therapist should be that unjudging friend shoulder to cry onto sort of situation.
Yes.
And that's 70% of the battle right there. And so you're right. Like if you don't feel comfortable going to therapy, or if you don't, you know, they're busy or whatever, or you just need somebody to talk to, pick that person that you know is going to listen to you and have a chat with them. And that's 70% of the battle right there. And so, I mean, one of my ultimate goals for this podcast, and obviously for my degree, is to be in that situation for people, right? And that's one of the reasons I like doing this podcast too, is because I can talk to people. I hope you don't feel like I'm judging you.
Oh, no, not at all. Not at all.
And so that's where, like, you know, for people who are listening, I know quite a few people who are listening to this podcast on a regular basis do reach out to me and share stuff, or you know, and I appreciate that actually when people listen and they say, hey, this podcast hit me, or this podcast this episode inspired me to do this or whatever. So I always appreciate that, and I always appreciate when people reach out and talk to me, because I mean, as much as I'm hoping this is going to be my career to pay the bills, it is also something that I enjoy doing, is talking to people and helping them work through their concerns. And so I appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate your time and your willingness to talk about some of the struggles that you've dealt with. So if you wanna give your concluding statement of anything you need to, your social medias and all that type of stuff that you want to share with people, and tell them to follow you at, so they can, so you can feel compelled and stressed.
I mean, I am on all platforms. I have a TikTok. I don't post a whole lot over there. I consume content, but not so much posting. But yeah, Instagram, Building Jesse. I don't really have a YouTube channel. Maybe someday, but
Don't do it. It's a lot of work.
it is a lot of work.
It's really, in all honesty, in this is my experience, and I don't know if I've actually talked about this on here. I mean, I don't have a huge following anywhere, but Instagram is actually my smallest following is on Instagram. But that's actually where I interact with people the most.
Mm-hmm.
Instagram has done a good job of actually providing the tools to communicate with people.
Yeah, I agree.
Whereas the other channels are, whoa, look at me. You know, there's not a lot of feedback in the same way that you can get in Instagram.
Yeah, very true. Well, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. I do try to be transparent. And so if you want to follow me and my house journey and my baby ducks and some wood shop stuff, more to come, I promise. Yeah, find me on Instagram. That's probably
and find out how she ends up murdering the baby ducks in the end of their life then.
Shh. Stop it.
Or giving them away.
Letting them go in a pond. Who knows?
Whatever happens. Anyway, we should move on to the after show before I say something that might offend somebody again.
Okay.
So if you found anything from this episode to be helpful and you want to reinforce it for yourself, I'd like to invite you to share it with a friend in the next 24 hours. That'll help reinforce it in your mind, and it'll help those around you, which is always a good thing. So thanks again for listening, and now I'd like to say thank you to all the amazing patrons of the Workshop Therapy podcast. You guys make the show possible. If you're finding the show helpful and you want to support it, there are a few tiers, including a simple $1 a month option to just say thanks. For $5 a month, you can get access to the patrons only feed that has a pre-show and a post-show, in addition to the regular podcast all in one feed. You all know that the good stuff happens after the official mics are off, right? If you can't support financially, I totally understand, but I'd love it if you left a 5-star review or told a friend about the podcast. If you have any questions or feedback, I'd love to hear that as well. Send it to questions@workshoptherapypodcast.com and I'll get it on the show. I want to say thank you to all the patrons of the Workshop Therapy podcast, but especially to the founding fathers, and they are Mr. Matthew Serio from Argiano Serio, Mr. Brad Harrison of Brad's Customs, Mr. Keith Drennan of Blackthorn Concepts, Mr. Eric Peterson of Overall Maker Works, Mr. Brandon Millichamp of Tectonic Creations, and the one and only the Grant Alexander. So a special thank you to the founding fathers, and thank you to everybody who supports and shares the Workshop Therapy podcast.